about the new forms that you guys may or may not have seen from the FARBAR, the FARBAR forms from Florida Realtors. The ones they did that they introduced first are simply compensation agreements. Some of them are sellers to buyer's broker. If you guys have used the commission agreements before, it's very similar to that. It's very similar to what you would do to the commission agreement that's already in place. It's called a compensation agreement. This one is. The other one's a commission agreement that you would use normally with a FSBO. If you're going to present a FSBO offer, you would use a commission agreement where it says pretty much the same things. So if you would please pull up the forms that I sent you, either that you got from Florida Realtors or that you got from me with the invitation to this meeting. And you will see, we're going to start on compensation agreement, seller to buyer's broker. This is the most important one of the ones that they sent. There were just 4 forms, but they're really just 2 forms and 2 modifications to those forms. So just like you have a modification to listing agreement now you have modifications to compensation agreements as well. All right. Everything that you see here is these are finished ones. It looks like they knocked out the easier ones first. And I'm going to cover these with you. Just so you know, there's going to be buyer brokerage agreement is going to come out, other agreements, the showing agreement, the open house, any kind of showing you're going to do from now on needs an agreement. Not from now on, from August 17th on, just to answer that question. From August 17th on needs a signed agreement before you show anybody anything. So those forms are going to come out. We are going to have Dan Vilson come in. He's an attorney who does all kinds of FREC stuff, all kinds of FARBAR stuff. That's his specialty. He is going to come in and talk to you guys on, right now, it's tentatively scheduled for July 17th. Because we have more forms coming out on July 9th and July 15th. So Florida Realtors have announced dates, or July 9th and July 12th, something like that. They've announced those dates. They're before the 17th, and he's going to come in and talk to you about these forms, assuming they don't keep putting them off. And the reason they're putting them off is because people keep tinkering with the settlement agreement as they're trying to get it all approved. And we can talk about that a little bit later. There's all kinds of things going on there. So there's a lot of uncertainty. None of this stuff is certain. I'm going to go over these with you. Nothing we really discuss here today is going to be final. I'm not even sure these are going to be final forms. They probably are, because they're very simple and straightforward. And they cover all of the terms so far in the settlement are covered here. If you guys have not read up on that, they just put something in the Florida Realtors magazine. They've been sending you emails. You should be caught up with that stuff, kind of stay on top of it. But you're welcome to ask any questions that you want. Anything that I know is just things that I've read from those places. And so I'll be happy to share that with you. Let's go over this agreement first. I'm going to share my screen. Compensation agreement. All right. I'm going to blow that up a little bit for you. I don't know how well you can see it. Can you see that okay? Anybody give me a nod there that's on their camera? I appreciate it. You can see that okay. Okay. So it starts with the...
it's a little small, but
I've just blown it up. I know it is. I see it's not getting bigger. It's blown up on my screen. It takes up the whole screen. So
it says 100%. Yeah. Oh, there.
There it goes. All right. There we go. All right. Compensation agreement, seller to buyer's broker. Thank you, Tammy. The seller to buyer's broker compensation agreement is between the buyer's broker. That will be you guys. If you're filling this form out, that will be Florida Realty Investments. Okay. And you can put / Carolina Estevez or whatever your name is there, or pay Carolina for all of them. And then the seller, whatever the seller's name is. Okay. This is similar to what you're doing with FSBOs now. The property address, obviously, and the property listed by, but this is for listed properties, listed by whomever is listing it. Maybe Florida Realty Investments, could be anybody. Carolina, you have a question?
Yes. So I'm just a little bit lost, but you might answer this. So are you saying that whether the property is listed or not, we do these forms? For example, if I'm going to if I'm
No.
gonna show this property.
Okay,
With
yeah,
the-
that's probably, let me kind of address all that. So we have a
Okay.
commission agreement already for when you do a FSBO. When you take a buyer to a FSBO. You've probably done that before. You take a buyer to a FSBO, you're going to present an offer. You have them sign an agreement first before you present the buyer's offer. Otherwise, you're not going to pay you anything, right?
Yes.
And so you say on there, Bob Smith and Susie Smith at 123 Oak Street are going to pay Carolina Estevez if she presents this buyer's offer and it's accepted, right? So that's what you have for a commission agreement. That's been around forever. This is for the new thing. This is for property listed by seller's broker. If you look up here, there's not even a line number, but you can see property listed by seller's broker. I don't know if you can see I don't think you can see it. But you see here, property address. And this property is listed by seller's broker, Keller Williams, Coldwell Banker, whoever it is, right?
Yeah.
All right. So that's what this is for. But this is for when they're not offering compensation, because we're going to look at that in a second. So it's when someone goes to a seller after August 17th, sits down for a listing agreement, and the seller says, I do not want to offer a commission. I'll pay, let's say that Tammy's listing this, and they'll say, Tammy, we'll pay you 2.5%, 3%, but we're not paying anybody else because we saw this lawsuit and we don't have to pay anybody else anymore. They don't understand that things haven't really changed that much, but that's what's in the news. So that's what they're going to do sometimes, right? We're anticipating that, right? Sometimes you're going to have to say, when someone calls on Tammy's listing, or looks at her website and says, hey, Tammy, I see you've got this property listed at 123 Oak Street. What are you guys offering a buyer's broker? And Tammy's going to have to say, well, they didn't want to offer anything, so sorry, right? Or she'll say 2.5% or whatever they're offering, right? But in this case that I just gave you, they're going to say nothing. So in that case, you say, Tammy, I'm going to present an offer, but first I'm going to need you to get this signed by the sellers. This is what I'm going to do.
Got it. So then you give it to the listing agent, not directly to the seller.
No, you can't talk to the seller. Seller's not your client.
Right.
Not without their permission. Okay.
I've already ran across that on the MLS. The guy has 0. I called him. He said the seller doesn't want to pay anything. And I'm like, okay. So I didn't know that we could do that. So at this point, but she's not paying anything.
I think that's not, Tammy, I saw that you sent me that, and I think that it's just not worth the MLS fighting right now, but I didn't know you could do that. If you try to,
I called him. I'm like, I didn't know we could do this. And he's like, well, she's not paying anything. And so I'm like, this is not even set up for us to, well, I guess it kind of is, but so yeah.
Well, here's an experiment for you to do real quickly. If you want, try one of your listings to go in there and change the compensation to 0 and see what it says. I don't.
You can do it because his says 0 with no percentage marks. And
but remember, it used to not. You
exactly, and that's what he said. The MLS is letting us do that now.
I don't think they want to fight that battle. I think now that it's been determined and they've lost in court, they don't want to fight that battle. So they're not going to tell people no yet. But it's not on the forums yet. So that listing agreement that the guy used, unless he made his own listing agreement up, which you can, that listing, well, his broker can, he can't. That listing agreement that he used says, now it does say now that you can't force you to offer compensation on there. So there you go. The current one, the most recently updated one. All right. So this is what's presented to the seller. For Tammy now has to present this in this scenario. Tammy has to present Carolina's form to her seller to say, Carolina is going to present us an offer. If we're going to take a look at her offer, we've got to give her whatever we put on here. Okay. The term compensation agreement takes effect when a fully executed copy has been delivered to all parties to this agreement and will remain in effect for, if you leave it blank, 30 days. So whatever 10 days, whatever we're going to do for an agreement. Now, if they keep going back and forth on their thing and you put 10 days in here and they keep going back and forth, it still is covered and it's still the same offer. But if you bring a different buyer, then it doesn't count outside of that term. In no event shall the term extend past the termination date of seller's broker's current listing of the property, obviously, including any extensions or effective protection periods, except that upon full execution of a contract for sale and purchase by a buyer of the property procured by the buyer's broker, the term will automatically extend through the date of the actual closing of the purchase agreement, just like a listing. Okay, if you have something, let's say you have a 3-month listing on something and 2 months in, you get a contract and the contract takes 60 days to close, you're still getting paid. You're still covered because it's the contract you had while you still had the listing, right? Now, if that contract falls apart after your listing expires, then you don't have a listing anymore or a contract, right? So that's how that works. Same for these. Buyer broker compensation. If buyer's broker is procuring cause of sale of property during the term, seller will compensate buyer's broker as stated below at the closing of the property, either a flat fee or percentage of the purchase price plus whatever. So the seller is going to compensate the buyer's broker X amount. So this typically will be, 2.5% or whatever's in your buyer brokerage agreement. We're going to talk about this very specifically. The buyer's brokerage agreement that we're going to have, if you put 3% on there, you cannot get 3% plus a bonus. You cannot get anything more, cannot get from all sources combined anything more than what you have on your buyer brokerage agreement that you're going to have with your buyers from now on. Well, from August 17th on. So you cannot get more money than that. We're going to probably see bonuses go goodbye and not see them anymore because you can, and you also can't leave it open. You can't say 3% plus any bonuses I get you, any bonuses I get. You can't leave it open-ended. They were very specific about this in the settlement. You cannot say, you cannot get more than whatever you put on there. And you could put 4% and just explain to your buyer, hey, I might not get 4%. I'm not going to chase you for it. I don't even know the legality of that yet. We'll talk about all that. That's all to be discussed with Dan, the attorney. But for now, you absolutely cannot, not just for now, it's going to be the case. You cannot get more than you put on your buyer brokerage agreement. So if you put 3%, you cannot get 3% plus Lennar wants to give you a $5,000 bonus. You cannot get it. So I think we're going to see those bonuses go away.
Ryan, can you put in there if there is any bonuses offered by a builder, because they do offer like Quicken loans?
You can put, now if you know what they're going to buy and you put, Lennar's offering you 3% plus, this is your third one with Lennar this year and they're going to give you 10 grand. You can put 3% plus 10,000.
But it has to be in there.
It has to be the exact amount. You cannot put, or not the exact amount. You can't get more than whatever amount you put in there. So you are limited to whatever you put on that buyer brokerage agreement, how much you can make on that transaction. Okay. So that's why I think we'll see bonuses go away, because you're not going to know what your buyer is going to buy. Typically, when you do a buyer brokerage agreement, you have no idea. How many times have you thought they want to buy new and then they buy existing, or you thought they want to buy existing and they don't like anything they look at and they want a new house. Happens all the time. Okay. Dispute resolution. We are all controversy claims and other matters in question between the parties arising out of or relating to this agreement or the breach thereof will be settled by first attempting mediation with the mediator agreed upon by the parties. If litigation arises out of this agreement, the prevailing party shall be entitled to recover reasonable attorney fees and costs unless the parties agree that disputes will be settled by arbitration as follows. We are still working on this, but we are leaning toward not approving this. Okay? Not signing for arbitration. But we will let you know that later. But we are leaning toward that at this point. I don't want to get you guys excited about it one way or not excited, but you guys going one way or the other on it. But we are leaning toward not agreeing to arbitration because this is the fairest way to do it. Is if somebody wants to sue somebody, then they should have to pay the other person's attorney's fees for wasting their time if they waste their time. So, and arbitration costs everybody money. So everybody gets an attorney and goes and they split it. So we'll worry about that later, but for now we're thinking about not doing that. Again, we don't use these forms for another 2 months. So, and they're going to disclose here, brokers' commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. And no event will the buyer's brokerage compensation exceed the amount of compensation in the written agreement with the buyer. They put this on every form, guys. I believe they are very serious about this. And no event will the buyer's brokerage compensation exceed the amount of compensation in the written agreement with the buyer. So who signs this? The sellers and the buyer's broker or authorized associate. That's going to be you guys. Carissa's not signing every form for every deal you guys do. As you see, there's several ones. You'll have something signed pretty much on every deal. So this is the most important one that came out, because this is the seller to buyer's broker when they're not offering commission, which is going to be your most difficult thing now. Is what this whole thing brought about is sellers not offering buyers brokers compensation. Again, I don't think it's going to be that much anytime soon, but you guys have already run into clients talking about it and saying, hey, whatever. There's on one of the mastermind pages, somebody's seller wanted to wait till August so they didn't have to offer compensation, which is just ridiculous. First of all, we just found out, at least in our MLS, they can do it without offering it, but also they only had to offer $1 before. So, they could have always done that, minus the $1. All right, so let's go to another page here. Any questions on this one before we move on? I'd almost like you to wait. Okay, go ahead, Chad.
Ryan, is this something that we can just pretty much pre-fill out and put it in the paperclip on MLS, so that way any agents, even though it's not technically listed, it would just be in the attachments on the MLS, so other agents can see what's being put, out there if they're offering 2.5 or 3?
No. Okay. So great question. Not this one. Not this one, Chad. We're going to look at one in a second that maybe that's the case. In fact, that might be a bad idea at all. And that probably is what we'll see. So that's a great question. I hadn't even thought of that. But no, I'm sorry. You can't put in any attachments what you're offering. So no, I take that back. They cannot put anywhere on the MLS or any attachments or anything what you're offering. So the answer to that, unfortunately, is no. It would be nice if you could, but we already have that and you can't, and we're not allowed to do that. So no, none of your attachments can have like a fact sheet that also says what the compensation is. You can put fact sheets on there, but you can't put that we're also offering the kind of stuff you're going to put on your website. You have to make them. Now you can put a link from what they're saying so far. All this stuff they're still battling it out. But from what they're saying so far is you can put a link to your website or any site that has the commission on it, any landing page that has the commission on it in your realtor remarks. So that's what you would do. Direct people to your website, direct other agents to your website, but you cannot use any code. You cannot say, my seller is 3% motivated to sell this thing, or anything like that. You can't put code in there, and you can't put anything in an attachment that says what you're giving for commission. Okay. Seller to, there's got to be no way through MLS that they can tell what you're offering. Okay. All right. Compensation agreement, seller by broker. Oh, we just did this one. Sorry. Let me do. Oh. Okay. This one is the modification of that seller to buyer's broker. All we're doing here is changing a term. It's the same thing. All we're doing, same information up here. The term shall be extended if the buyer's almost ready to put their offer in, but they're not. And then the amount of compensation will be if they end up changing this. If the seller says, okay, so the listing is, let's say Tammy's listing again. They're not offering any commission to the buyer's broker, and they're asking $400,000 for it, right? And Carolina takes them this thing and says, I got somebody willing to make an offer. They're looking to make a full price offer. Okay, so they do that, and they come back and they get it under agreement. And then they get the appraisal, and the appraisal comes back at 380. And so they renegotiate the price, and the seller says, I'll drop it to 390 if you'll take 2% instead of 2.5. Okay. This will be a modification. This is where you change the commission. That's all they're doing. Changing the commission they offer. Or if you say, maybe they say, yeah, I'll sign this for Carolina. We'll pay her 2.5 or 3% or whatever, but she better have that offer to us in the next 5 days. We'll pay her that in the next 5 days. And then you get it, and they're not ready to make the offer for, you get on the 5th day, and they're not ready to make the offer till the next day or whatever it is, right? And so you want to extend it another 5 days, something like that. I don't think that'll be used very often, but the because once you're under contract, it's good. But the compensation of buyer's brokerage, that will That will change anytime you change your commission, or they want to change your commission, or you want to change your commission. Okay. As long as everybody agrees to it. Look at this in bold again at the bottom of this is just a modification. They've already signed one form that says this. Commissions are not set by law, fully negotiable. In no event will buyer's brokerage compensation exceed the amount of compensation in the written agreement with buyer. How important do you think they think that is? They keep put it in every agreement, even the modification to the agreement you already signed that says that. So, or that the seller already signed. That's who it's for mostly. All right, let's look at compensation agreement. All right, so those are the two there. Carolina, you have a question on that before we go to the other one?
Yes, I wanted to double check if you discussed this or not. When we do a commission agreement with the buyer or buyer representation, or the buyer's paying us or the buyer moving forward, but the buyer doesn't have the money to pay us, have we talked about putting it on the contract saying that they're going to pay us whatever percentage we used to ask for lowering the price or 10% closing costs? Would this be considered closing costs for our compensation instead of doing this? Or in addition to this, do we put it on the contract, or how are we gonna get paid if the buyer doesn't have it? I guess this is to have the seller pay, but what about if nobody wants to pay?
If nobody wants to pay, the buyer has to pay it, and you take them to a different house that will pay if the buyer can't pay it. So there's there's going to be a lot of that, and so that's what Tammy's got to explain to her seller in this situation. There are going to be, we have a $400,000 house here. We're going to have FHA, VA type buyers for this. We're going to have people who aren't making huge down payments, people who don't have tons of cash, right? It's not $1 million house. It's a $400,000 house in this case. So we're talking about people who don't have tons of cash. We're talking about people who can't afford to pay their agent if the seller doesn't put it in the thing. I mean, that's who this is really hurting, is the buyer who doesn't have a lot of down money, right?
Right.
If the seller is going to decide not to offer commission to pay their agent, or they're just not going to be represented, and that hurts them even more. Now, what happens when their inspection comes back and they don't know, what to do, about anything? So they don't have any experience. They never bought a house before, or whatever, right? That's who it's going to hurt. This is the whole thing is stupid, and that's who it's going to hurt.
Right.
But yeah, you take them to another house, and
Now,
you know what? You tell them, and Carolina, you tell them you are not. They're very serious. We talked about a couple of weeks ago. They put in the thing the word steering. You can't steer your clients away from sellers' properties who aren't offering you a commission. But
right.
I'm doing the best thing for my buyer if I don't take them to a property that won't pay me commission. Right now, we can talk to Tammy and say, will they pay a commission if we offer full price with this and this? And she can run that back to them. And if they say, well, yeah, if they're going to pay full price, then that's when you say, all right, we'll have them sign this, and then we got an offer for you. And that's what, to answer the question I think Jenny asked in chat. Yes, when you run that by them and say, are they going to pay commission if I offer, if we offer full price, will they pay me 2.5%? Because that's what my buyer owes me. Tammy's going to go to the seller and say, hey, I've got a full price offer for you, but we got to pay their agent 2.5%. They're going to put it in the closing costs and prepaids. To answer that question, yes, it'll be in their closing costs and prepaids.
Okay.
So yes, they can do that. You missed it also when Paul came in, the lender, and explained that VA is now going to allow you to put closing costs and prepaids for buyer's brokerage. And they've made that change. So VA can now do that. You couldn't do that with VA before. So this was directly hurting veterans. It still is directly hurting veterans. It's still directly hurting all first-time home buyers or anybody who doesn't have a lot of money. It's crazy policy, but it is.
In addition to what you just said, so I have a listing that I'm doing in Claremont. I'm asking for 6% still, because I wanted to compensate the buyers, and I still did the listing agreement saying that I'm going to be paying the buyer's agent. So how has that changed because now I'm a bit confused because I'm negotiating my commission with the seller, but to pay the buyer's agent or whoever
Well-
brings a buyer.
Well, first of all, if it sells before August 17th, you get a contract before August 17th, it won't matter. Second of all, you should keep doing things the way you've been doing it. And they're going to let you know about it. They made part of their announcement was, we're going to let you know what happens if you've got a ongoing listing, an active listing on August 17th. They're going to let you know what to do with it. Okay. But, and that you're offering buyer second. It's not going to be any different, guys. This is going to add a little bit of work, a little bit more openness to you. We are not upset about this at all. It's not going to hurt us. You just have to, in fact, if you're good at what you're doing and you can articulate yourself about what you do and the value that you bring, this is going to help you. Okay. This is not doom and gloom like a lot of people are saying it is. Acting like it is. Actually, what people are doing, and you guys don't take this the wrong way, is a bunch of terrible realtors are using this as an excuse of why they're not going to be successful. And it's sad. Get out there and do this form. It's another form you have to do. Now you have to talk about your commission. You have to openly talk about your commission with your clients, both sides. You have to actually convince the seller now why it's a good idea to do this. And I just told you why it's a good idea. We're limiting the pool of buyers if we don't offer this. We're limiting the pool of agents who will show it, because you might say, we've talked about this many, many times on here about how ethical we are as realtors. Well, guess what? When it comes down to money, we don't work for free, and we're not showing houses that don't get us paid. And if you guys can't negotiate, if you go to Tammy with this and say, I got a full price $400,000 offer for you, if they'll pay me 2.5%, and they come back and say, well, we'll pay her 1%. Well, now you got to go to your buyer. Well, a lot of agents will just be too weak to go to their buyer and say, listen, you're going to have to pay me another 1.5% out of your pocket or 2% out of your pocket. A lot of them will just take them to another house, right? Why fight that battle? We'll find another house. That's fine. So it's not exactly a huge seller's market out there right now, right? We'll find another house. So that's what's going to happen. I hope I answered that question. I got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but that's what's going to happen. So just be straight up. Oh, you're talking about taking the listing. Yeah, 6%. Tell them why we're offering 3% to somebody else. Because people have to, people still have to do this. And right now, again, until August 17th, any listing you take, you're going to offer the other side, whatever you've been normally doing. There's still the minimum is still, well, apparently Tammy just found out it's $0, but we thought it was $1, but it's right around there somewhere, right around $0 to $1. Let's call it 50 cents. You have to offer the other side. Right now is all you've ever had to offer since you guys have been in the business is $1 to the other side. But have you ever offered $1? Very few of you have. Most of you have always offered 2.5% or 3% or 2% or whatever you could get. So we're going to talk about this. We're about to talk about seller's broker to buyer's broker. So Tammy now, a different scenario. Let's say Carolina has this listing you just got in Claremont, right? So let's say you got this listing and it's after August 17th and you are offering 3% to the other side, but nobody knows that unless they went to your website and saw it or they called you and you told them. So now you call Carolina and you asked her about her listing in Claremont. And Carolina says, yeah, we're offering 3%. Good news. And the other agent says, oh, right, this is great. Just like the good old days. So I'm going to need to get that in writing from you. Of course, you're going to need to get it in writing because Carolina told you in a phone call, but that people have misspoken before. So let's get this in writing. So you're going to send them the form that you see on your screen now. Compensation agreement, seller's broker to buyer's broker. We've never had to use this form before because it's been on the MLS, and you could always say, that's what it said on the MLS. That's how I know how much I'm getting paid, right? Seller's broker to buyer's broker. Seller's broker, in this case, will be Florida Realty Investments / Carolina Estevez. And we're going to make Tammy the buyer's broker, Florida Realty Investments / Tammy Pipkin, okay? Property address, whatever it is in Claremont. Buyer's name, whatever Tammy's buyer's name is. And the term, okay? Compensation takes effect when a fully executed copy has been delivered to all parties. This agreement will remain in effect for blank days. But you don't really care. You could, since they're offering this, you could say, I don't know if it's legal right now to do this, but yeah, it says optional, complete if applicable. It could be any buyer because you don't care, Carolina. You're offering 3%. Tammy can bring you Ronald McDonald. You don't care. As long as it's a real buyer and they go under contract, you're going to pay Tammy that. So it's not for any particular buyer. So that's kind of a weird thing. But in some cases, maybe you're offering Tammy more or less than you normally would for something else. So let's say your seller's offering 1%, but in this case, and you're getting 4%, right? You got a 5%, but your seller's already offering 1% to somebody else. You might decide to give Tammy 2.5%. Right. In that case, if she brings you this full price offer from the, Martinez family. Okay. So she brings you that and you're going to pay her that. But typically you're going to just put on here, yeah, we're offering 3%. Can you do that in email? Yes. It just needs to be in writing. I want you guys to get it in writing from somebody. Okay. Takes an effect for, you don't care how long this is, right? As long as the property is available, it's in effect. Buyer's brokerage compensation. Seller broker will compensate buyer's broker. This is how it's always been, guys, from your listing agreement. As stated below, at closing of property, if buyer identified above in paragraph 3 closes on property and buyer's broker is procuring cause of the sale of property during the term, obviously, right? It's going to be their name on the bottom of the contract. If no buyer is identified in paragraph 3, buyer's broker will be compensated at closing of property if buyer's broker is procuring cause of the sale of the, what does it say? If no buyer is identified, yes. If no buyer is identified, you're still going to get paid because you don't have to identify a buyer, because Carolina in this scenario is offering it to anyone who brings her a buyer, right? Just like you guys do now on MLS. Seller's broker agrees to compensate the buyer's broker. Check 1. Typically, it's going to be 1%, right? So in this case, it was 3%. You got 6%. Assuming you're offering 3% to the other side, then we'll do 3%. Plus, I would go ahead and put a 0 here, nothing. And there you go. Other terms, whatever, right? Now, if Tammy's form only says, with her buyer, only says 2.5%, can she take 3%?
No.
Nope. Okay. What happens at other 0.5%?
The probably listing agent gets it.
Yep. Okay. Arbitration. Again, we're on the fence about this, but we're thinking no for arbitration. We'll tell you guys not to do that. Miscellaneous clauses, agreement will be construed. Okay. Look at this. Buyers, brokers' commissions are not set by law or fully negotiable. Now, this is a form being filled out by brokers, and they're still putting in here, brokers' commission are not set by law and fully negotiable, as we all know. In no event will buyer's brokerage compensation exceed the amount of compensation in buyer's broker's separate written agreement with buyer. You guys have probably heard that on every form that we've done so far, and that's what it is. So this is a very basic and easy form, guys. This is between something you've already probably negotiated with your seller. This is just putting what's on your listing agreement. Typically, you can alter it by making a different one. Or, as we can go to the next form, the modification to this is,
I have an idea.
Yes, ma'am.
I got a text from a cleaning company that redid their marketing, and they had this woman. She was an AI woman, and she spoke. It was really well done. I'm sitting here thinking, maybe you should make a video of yourself kind of going through all the explanations so it's consistent, and you let them listen to all the points, or you can stop and talk about them, because sometimes you might be all over the place. But if you did like a presentation that was pre-done, then it would kind of be the same every time. That might be a stupid idea, but I thought of it.
You're talking about this, me going through these forms?
No. With us in front of a client, like if we
Yes.
did
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
a video and pre-wrote it out and addressed all the issues and then recorded it to where when you're with them, you just have them watch the video as like your presentation, and then you answer questions maybe afterwards.
Yeah, that's a great idea. But I think it's probably a little more personal if you just know it all and continue to be consistent.
But it's, yeah, I guess so. But sometimes you miss points, or you're not organized, it gets off track. But I agree.
Yeah, like Vivian just said, bullet points and go through them, but because it's a little more personal. But I like that too, and that's something you can send them kind of as a let me recap what we talked about today. I'll give you guys this video so you can look over it. Good idea. Seller's broker.
Ryan, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh, hey, I'm sorry. I have my. Hey, how you doing, Ryan? I had a question. I'm just kind of confused. So let's say after August 17th, because I'm right now I'm representing some buyers, some clients to buy a house. So if I sign an agreement with them to say like, hey, I'll charge, we'll agree on 2.5%, for me to charge, charge them the commit, their fees, and the listing agent is offering 3%.
Mhm.
So am I going to get the whole 5.5%?
What do you mean the listing agent is offering 3%? You can't get more than what you did with your buyer. And if
Okay.
So,
So-
but go ahead and put 3% on your buyer's side. Now, if you have a listing agreement and you're representing both sides, you can get that from the seller. So you have a 3% from the seller, or you have a 6% agreement with the seller, and you actually find the buyer.
Yeah.
And before you show them the house, you're going to put 3%. That's perfectly fine. You get 3 from each side. Perfectly fine.
Oh,
If it's
okay.
your listing, it doesn't matter what you put on the buyer side. You can put 0 on there, and you're going to get all 6% because you are getting the entire deal.
Okay.
Right?
But
as a
I got you.
buyer's agent, don't put 2.5% on them. Put 3,
Okay.
or whatever. We have people. I told you guys, Christina, and she was in here explaining it to you guys. She puts 4. She's been putting 4, and not because of this thing. She's been putting 4 anyway.
I see.
She's been putting. She did one for a condo that was going to be 150 to 200,000. She put $7,000, which is more than 3%. And the person's paying it. So
I got you. And of course you use this, just to clarify, you use this form that you just went over after talking with the listing agent, like what they're offering, like say, hey, yeah, I'm going to give you 3%. If you bring a buyer, and I'll basically,
it's whatever's on their listing agreement. They either talk the seller into giving you something or they didn't, or they talk them into 2% or 2.5 or 3 or whatever. And if they're at 2 and your agreement says 3, then you can amend your offer to say, you can either send them the one that says the seller's going to pay me more, or you can send them one that says, or you can put something in the contract that says seller will give an extra 1% back to the buyer toward closing costs and prepaids. And yes, your
This is
commission.
after we speak. I think he's saying this is after we
After,
call the
yeah.
agent, and then you confirm it with this paperwork in writing that they're
Yes.
paying what they said.
correct.
So yeah.
Okay.
So
No, thank
Ryan, this one is only necessary since they can't put in the MLS, but they are at the same time the seller is willing to give the commission to the buyer side, right?
That's going to be most of the time still.
Yeah.
Because you guys are going to be good listing agents, and most people are, and say, look, we typically, you don't have to legally, but we're going to do better with this listing if we offer the other side some money. Your house, all these comps that we pull for these houses, just so you guys know, and you can explain this to your sellers, all the comps we pull are people typically paying 5 to 6% in commission. Your house, the neighbor 3 doors down sold for $750, but part of that $750 was paying whatever that is, 23 grand to a buyer's agent, right? So that's an inflated value based on paying 6%, not based on paying 3%. So if you have a $750,000 house, you didn't just make 21 grand by this stupid settlement. Okay, your house is not worth 750 if unless we're going to cut them some money, and I'm not offering 750 for your house unless you're paying me a commission. And I'm going to tell my client that. Yeah, the comps here say 750. Look, they're asking 750. Comps say 750. If we offer 750, they're going to pay me a commission out of that because that's where that comp came from. They were paying commission out of that 750. Right? Is that not true? They didn't net, minus that. No, they paid that out of that 750. The previous owner paid, or whoever sold that paid a buyer's broker that. So they netted 21 grand less, or 23.5 less, 22.5 less than what that form says. Okay, what the comp says. So comps are based on roughly 5 to 6% commission, and now you can't just cut that to 2.5 to 3% and say my property's still worth the same, and cut out the buyer's broker. No, you didn't just get a 3% bump in your property. I'm going to send you an offer based on what your comps are, but you're going to pay me commission.
How would it work if the seller is not paying anything? So it wouldn't be on the contract, and the buyer wants to pay you. Can they just pay you directly through the office? Like they write a check for your fee?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a buyer owes you, if they sign that buyer brokerage agreement, they owe you whatever that is if they buy a house through you. Okay. So if it's 3% of whatever their purchase price ends up being, right? That's what the form says, X percent of purchase price, of gross purchase price, right? So if they buy you that, if they owe you that, let's say they buy that $400,000 house for $400,000 and they have a 3% thing, they owe us $12,000. They owe Florida Realty Investments $12,000 because
Or
of your,
maybe would it be on a closing statement? Like, would you
Not
write it on the
necessarily.
contract?
And no. So we're going to make this. So we're going to make our forms a part of the purchase. What is it?
Oh, so it would go on the title. It
It's
would
part
go on.
of the closing. It
Yes.
is a part of the closing. It does not. So we cannot be cut out of this deal. It's part of the closing. So yes, they can pay. They can satisfy that however they want. They can pay the office, or they can take it to the closing, put it on the HUD and take it to the closing, and as part of what buyer needs to bring to closing.
Which would be desirable,
That would be the best.
preferential.
Well, yeah, that's the best. But if they write us a check for $12,000, that's fine too. But you want to make it part of the closing. Yes, Livette.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correct, Ryan, what you're saying is no compensation can be on the MLS, but we can negotiate outside of the MLS.
Of course, that's the good and the bad. The bad, the good is, well, the bad was before, whatever the MLS says is what you were stuck with, and you weren't supposed to negotiate that. The good news is now the MLS doesn't say, but you can negotiate whatever you want or try. Right.
Okay. And
So-
if with the buyer's brokerage agreement, if we have 3% and then we find out that the seller agreed to pay an extra 3%, we can only get 3%, not 6%, correct?
Of course, no. Yeah, that's the same 3%. Yeah, you can't get any more than what you put on the buyer brokerage agreement.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Yeah, they put that at the bottom of every form here. Let's see, this is just a modification, and they still did it in this. I haven't gone over this modification yet, but that doesn't. Go ahead, Javier.
Yes, if I'm understanding correctly, this document that we are seeing today, the compensation agreement, is to cover us in case that somebody's selling a property. So let's say that Tammy has a listing and the seller agreed to pay only 3% for her, and that's it. So what we're doing with this agreement is covering our commission before we start looking properties with the client to avoid any
not
property that
this-
the client, I'm sorry, to avoid the case that the client, the buyer, like a property and the property doesn't pay any commission and we start negotiating with him at that moment. It's better to sign this agreement before to avoid to get in that kind of situation with the buyer, right?
Yeah, and so if your buyer absolutely can't do it, then you might not show this property that Tammy has, right? Because you're not going to do this every property. Yeah, you can't go around fighting this battle and having every seller agree to pay you some commission before you even show the property. So it's going to be, it's going to, so just, I just wanted to clarify, the one you're looking at right now is not that. This is for Carolina's listing where the guy did, and this is a real thing that she had where they're paying 6%. Okay, they're doing 3 and 3. So that's what this one's for, because it says, I'm pointing at it, it's not doing you any good. It says seller's broker to buyer's broker. This is a regular thing like what we do now. This is when you list something under Florida Realty Investments and you offer it to anybody from Keller Williams or Coldwell Banker or Florida Realty Investments, you offer them 3%, right? That's what this is for. You're just putting it in writing because you couldn't put it in the MLS anymore. This form. Let's go back to this form though. Here we go. Let's go back to this one. Compensate. This is what you're talking about. This is Tammy's listing that's only offering Tammy 3% as a listing agent, not offering the buyer's agent anything. They heard about this settlement and they don't have to pay buyer's commission anymore and blah, 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 right? So you have a buyer, Javier, who is scratching pennies together and begging, borrowing, and stealing for a down payment, right? And you call Tammy and Tammy says, Tammy, because you don't know, and you say, what are you guys offering? And she says, nothing, not a dime. They're so excited about this settlement that they don't have to pay a buyer's brokerage. I tried to talk them into it, but they wouldn't do it. Okay. And you're going to say, oh boy, well, I got somebody that's going to be, trying to rub nickels together to pay me and to come up with a down payment. And my agreement says 3%. Will they pay 3%? Do you think they would give them 3% toward closing costs, whatever? Tammy can say, I don't know. You can present us something. That's up to you now to decide whether or not you're going to show that property. Now, they're going to tell you And my official thing is probably that you should still show the property because you'll be steering them away from that. But if they can't afford it, and then what good are you doing your buyer if your buyer can't afford it? You wouldn't show them any other house they can't afford. So if they can't afford the 3% that they owe you, they flat out owe you. That's a real, that buyer brokerage agreement, it hasn't come out yet, but it's a real legal document. They owe you, just like the one now is. They owe you that money if they buy a house from you and you're representing them. So they really owe that money. And if they can't come up with 3.5% down for their FHA plus 3% from you, they don't have the money for that. In this case, that $400,000 house, if they don't have 12 plus 13.5, if they don't have 25.5 to pay you and their down payment with no help from the seller, then why would you show them that property?
But you could try, you could submit an offer and see, and if they didn't,
Why? No, they're going to talk to you. No, now they can just submit this one, the commission compensation agreement seller to buyer's broker. They can send this to you, Tammy. And if your seller won't sign this, paying them their 3%, then why do it? Or they can say, or they can send you guys, they can send a contract that says 6.5% compensation, right? So it's just a
conditional.
I'm sorry, 6.5%, not compensation. I'm sorry, concession, a 6.5% concession toward buyers' closing costs and prepaids. And I don't know if FHA is going to go up, how high they're going to go up. They're already at 6, I think. But who knows? So if the lender says you can do it, you can do it. But that's the big mess that's going to happen, because that is why you don't want a listing where they don't offer anything. You need to talk your sellers into still offering.
but should they add to the form, and maybe it says it, should they add like another box where if the buyer doesn't have the funds to close, they're willing to contribute to their closing costs?
No, but you can talk to your sellers about that and tell people that when they call.
Yeah.
You know, that can be, whatever. I don't know. That's between you and your seller. It's totally up to the seller. They don't, they never had to offer more than $1. So this whole thing is dumb.
Yeah, I
They never
know.
had to offer more than $1. So the whole thing is really, really dumb. They just changed the rules so a bunch of lawyers got rich, but I'm not going to get into that.
So it's different way to negotiate, because based on what Tom is saying, so we can ask the seller to contribute with some part of the closing costs of the buyer, while we talk with the buyer and said, my commission is this percentage. So that way the seller believes he's affording money to the closing cost and not to my commission.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know if
what
I
you're going to
explained
end up
myself.
doing, what people are going to end up doing is making offers asking for 6.5% concessions before even looking at the property. Because are you going to go around showing a bunch of properties that aren't offering you any commission, and you're going to have to fight? It's going to be difficult. They didn't offer a commission to start with.
Yeah, when you send a lease of property to a client, imagine to check 20, 30 properties one by one, say checking by the commissions, who pay, who doesn't pay. So, usually we put a criteria to the search and send the properties to the client.
I bet you guys have done, Javier, it'll get a nod or whatever from you guys. How many of you guys are a thumbs up in the thing? How many of you guys have written a contract and didn't even think about whether it was 2.5 or 3% or whatever? You forgot to even look. How many of you guys have written a contract for a buyer and done that before?
No, I don't.
You've never done that without looking?
No. I always look.
I've done it without looking before, because I just assume it's going to be fair, 2.5, 3%, whatever. Now you've got to go through and look. I've never gone through. If you look at 8 properties and gone through and see which one's 2.5 and which one's 3 and which one's 2%.
Yeah, but I see it when the client put it in favorite.
What's that?
When the client put the property that they like, they put the heart on the property. Then is when I look the all the details of the listing.
Fair enough. But when you go show these properties, do you not show the ones that are 2% or 2.25%? And you do show the ones that are 3 and 2.5%? Because
no, I show 2.5 and up.
Okay. So you don't show the ones that are 2 or 2.25%. Do you know that is not what we're supposed to do? I know. I know. Get it. I get it, but that's exactly the point I make. That's exactly the point you need to make to your sellers. Some agents don't show properties if you don't offer enough money. And that's the thing. And if Tammy's, let's take Tammy's people for instance, if they don't want to offer 3% or 2.5%, even or 2% or 1.5% or anything to a buyer's broker, you think they're going to smile on a 6.5% concession? No, the whole point they're doing it is to save money, to be cheap, right? So they're going to it's going to be tough if somebody's not offering a buyer's side commission, buyer's brokerage commission. It's going to be tough to negotiate this compensation. We think we'll just ask for compensation. Good luck. I mean, they might, but only when reality, let it sit on the market for 2 months. Let Tammy have to go back and explain to them why they're not getting offers, and they're not getting offers. They're not getting showings because they're not offering any agent commission. And agents are, I don't know if you guys know this, I might be breaking news. Realtors are lazy and they don't want to show houses that aren't offering compensation. They don't want to argue with a seller about getting paid. They don't want to take the risk that they're not going to get paid or that they're going to have to split it and get 1.5%. And plus they got to split that with their brokerage. And one of the things we're going to talk about here is a modification to listing agreement. And the reason we're going to let you guys sign, and it says at the bottom of these forms, it says it says broker or authorized representative, authorized associate. Because if your broker is splitting with you, like a lot of you guys come from Keller Williams or Coldwell Banker, or somebody who gets a good split out of you, they're not going to let you work for you guys know that, right? You guys all have come from somewhere. A lot of you have, obviously. And your brokers don't let you work for whatever you want to work for. You have to work for some kind of money because they get some of it. So they care how much your commission is. We don't, if you guys want to work for 1% here, you can, because we don't care. We get a transaction fee. You guys can work for whatever you want. But a lot of people, a lot of brokers are going to, you're not an authorized, so our agents are authorized associates to sign this, but a lot of brokers won't be because they're going to have to negotiate these things. And the modification I was about to show you from the other form, let's do a modification even to this one. Even this modification, the broker or authorized associate, a lot of brokerages are going to want to sign these and approve everything you guys negotiate. So, and this is a modification. You can't just drop your fee to whatever you want if you work for a broker who's going to take 30% of it. So these are all things that are going back to realtors are lazy. Realtors don't want to fight with Tammy over that money, or Tammy seller over that money when they can show another house right down the street. And so Tammy's got to explain that to her without the whole realtors are lazy part to her seller about other realtors, and that they're not going to show. I mean, Javier, if you weren't showing properties because they weren't offering enough before, you certainly don't want to fight with somebody over a commission. I mean, I don't blame you, right? Who wants to fight with somebody to prove I gotta prove my worth to Tammy's client now? Not even my client. I gotta prove my worth to Tammy's client. That's crazy, right? So you got to remember that when you're the listing agent, to how to explain this. You got to figure out how to explain this to them and let them know. People don't want to. I don't want to have to negotiate with the seller before I even show the property and present an offer. If I've got one before, I've got a similar couple of properties to show them. We'll just skip this one. I mean, half the time you end up skipping properties you show anyway. As you guys know, a lot of agents don't show up for the appointments that they make for various reasons. Their buyers are running late or whatever happens. There's going to be people who are going to no-show, or people who are going to try and negotiate with Tammy's client, and they're not going to hear back from Tammy in time because their client's busy this morning, and they're not going to know if they're going to get a commission or not, so they're not going to show it. Right? I mean, how many houses are you going to show if you might not get paid? Or you write an offer, your client gets all excited. What's the worst thing that can happen is your client gets all excited about it, and Tammy's client, her seller, will not agree to a compensation agreement. They will not agree to a concession. Now what? So
yeah,
the whole reason they wouldn't allow Tammy to offer you compensation to start with is because they were trying to save 3%. They heard about this great settlement, and their house is now worth more because they don't have to pay.
Yeah, in the case of Romina, Lara, and me, will be easier because we usually will work with foreign national buyers, so they usually put 30% down, plus closing costs. So for them, it's not that difficult to put a little bit more for compensation. I mean, for commission.
Right, and you can offer less typically. If people are reasonable, which is all you're doing when you ask for a concession. If you go in at full price and say I want 3% back, you're just offering less. You're offering 3% less. In Tammy's case, you say, all right, well, you guys, if you got 30% down kind of buyers, let's say it's an investment property and you've got a buyer for it, Javier, and they're fine pay, they've got plenty of cash, they're putting 30% down, right? Say instead of paying 400 for this, we think it's worth 400, we're going to offer 390 and you pay me 3%. Right? That gets them back up to 399 anyway. So that's the kind of thing. Do you have any more questions, Javier?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I beat that one to death and get off on tangents, but that's kind of how it works. Tariq.
Yes, Ryan. Back to that question. I'm still kind of confused. Like, where am I getting the money from? Like, I know if I sign the contract, if I sign a buyer's client agreement at 3%, and the listing agent says the seller, the listing agent says that, yeah, I'm going to give you 3% for your commission. I know I can't get 6% at the end. So how am I going to get 3% because I signed it with
it's the same 3%, Tariq. You're getting the same 3%. We've gone with the buyer's brokerage agreement before. That's the 3% that's typically being offered. And in your case that you just brought up, they're offering you 3%. That's the same 3%.
So, so the buyer is not basically giving me 3% out of their money. I'm getting.
No, it's always been that way. Nope, they're not paying you. It's the same thing. And in the case that you're saying, which was Carolina's listing, where it's a 6% listing, they're offering 3 and 3. They're doing 3 and 3. Then that's the same 3% that's going to pay you. That absolves the buyer of anything. So buyers have not been paying their own broker. They pay it because it's part of the purchase price, and they're going to have a mortgage on it, or they put the down payment for it. So they're paying it, but it's coming from the seller's proceeds.
But if they say 2%, let's say the listing agent instead of 3, it says, I'm going to give you 2%, and I already signed a 3% with my buyer.
Your buyer still owes you 1%. They've got to come up with another 1%.
Got you. Okay.
And you can waive that if you feel like it, because you know they can't pay it, or if they can pay it, then they pay it. Okay.
Gotcha. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure.
Helen, 1 second. Jenny, no, I just made up the 6.5 because it was 3.5 for FHA and 3 for the commission. It is not, it depends on the loan. So ask the lender based on the loan, and that's all. A lot of that is changing. So you couldn't do anything before with, beyond some closing costs with VA. They're going to let you do stuff now for buyer's brokerage. You could not do that before. So that's all going to change. So that's up in the air. But no, that 6.5 isn't the max. I just made that up. 6 is the max for some things. And so just stay tuned with that, and we'll have lenders come in and talk to you about that before this goes live too. Helen.
Hi. Can this compensation agreement go, that this can go as an attachment in the MLS? Like this will make the life easier for all other real estate agents?
Well, yeah, it would make life easier what if you could put it down at the bottom of your listing as a percentage? It would make it real easy. That's what they stopped, Helen. So we can't put it anywhere on the MLS. Yes, it would make it super easy if you could do that, but there's very clear, not on the MLS or any attachment to the MLS. You can put a link to a landing page on your website or any website you want that says what you're offering. Have a picture of the house, some of the facts, maybe the public remarks and the realtor remarks, and the seller is offering a buyer's brokerage, 3%, 2.5%, whatever they're offering.
Okay.
But you cannot put it as an attachment on the MLS. Nowhere. If someone only has the MLS on their computer, there's no way they can find it. That is the settlement. That's the main part of the settlement. Yes, Chad. Yeah, it would make it easier, Helen. You're right. Chad.
Is it possible on the buyer's agreement to put a checkbox that says, I only want to see houses that pay a commission?
That is something that we will possibly, we're going to look at putting into our agreement, because we're going to add something, if it's legally possible, to add that, and to add that this is I forget the legalese for it, but it's part of the closing is contingent on this being paid.
That it's not steering if they're only wanting to go look at those properties in the first place and they sign off on it.
Right, but nothing is steering if they have it in writing that that's what they want. I mean, unless they have something, the protected class. I don't want to live in this kind of neighborhood or that kind of neighborhood. But as far as the money goes, the money is not protected. The money is open for debate. And yes, I agree with you. The same way that we write on listing agreements, and I recommend you guys do this. I'm not going to present offers under X amount. So you don't have to present every time you get one of these stupid lowball offers that go out automatically when you put a listing in, right? So you can put, on your listing agreements, you can put right now, broker will not, even though we're legally or ethically obligated to present all offers, not if you put on there, broker will not present offers under 85% of asking price. You know what I mean? So you don't, because there's a lot of them that go out automatically at 70% as soon as you put the listing on. So yes, I believe we can do that, Chad. We will discuss it further, but we will have some things that we're going to recommend, not recommend, we're going to have our own forms that will say that on them, or we will recommend that you guys write it in there until we get the forms ready. Okay. Livette.
Yeah, Ryan. I was just thinking for that buyer's commission, it might be easier to just take it off the sales price.
Yeah, but then the buyer's got to come out of pocket. You got to get paid somehow.
No, but let's say it's a 300,000 house and just 3% off that, and you just submit an offer less. That
Yeah, if your buyer's got cash.
Mm-hmm.
But how much cash does your buyer have? If your buyer's got cash, then yeah, sure. What difference does it make? But if your buyer, that's what I was talking about with Javier. If his buyer's got plenty of cash, then they can just offer less for the house and pay him 3%. But if which he's going to have a buyer's brokerage agreement with all of them now, he has to, even if they're foreign, he still has to have a buyer brokerage agreement with them. So you're going to have that buyer brokerage agreement. Yeah, that's fine to take it off if they're paying you cash.
Oh, that won't come from the loan. I was just thinking.
No, it won't. No, it won't come from the loan unless it's in the purchase price.
Oh, well, I guess a lot of lazy realtors will believe in this perfection.
Well, I think so lenders they're talking about lenders putting it in. So, lenders being able to, something that's being discussed is lenders being able to add it to the purchase price to possibly loan money on it. That is something that's being discussed. I don't know if that's going to happen. Vivian.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to find my microphone, Ryan. So as you were relating to Tammy earlier about the buyer could bring a check, or we could add it to our HUD, our closing statement. I don't know that a title company is going to want to take a buyer's check at the last minute, right? So they're going to have to make arrangements regardless. So why not just turn this in with our CDA?
Well, not with your CDA, but turn it into you're going to present it. In this case, you can send it to the title company and like they would an invoice and have them put it on the HUD. So turn your buyer brokerage agreement into like an invoice to the title company and have them put it on the HUD. Yeah, that was a bad idea. Don't do the check. Do the other. But they owe the money, and yeah, we don't want their check either because we don't want to pay $36 when it bounces. So and then chase them for the $12,000 again. That doesn't sound likely. So yeah, turn it in on the HUD. That's the thought right now. There's other things to be discussed, and they're talking about, if you listen to the board, they're talking about how you can't really enforce this at closing. You're going to have to chase them if they come to the table and they say, "What is this? We don't want to pay Tammy." Well, that's why we're making it a condition of closing. That's the term I was looking for, by the way. Condition of closing. This payment is a condition of closing. So they cannot walk away from the table and say, "Chase me for that $12,000." They're going to have to pay that $12,000 at the table. It's just, I don't know why they wouldn't. It's just as legal as a listing agreement. Have you ever had a seller go in and say, and look at the HUD at the closing table and say, "What is this $18,000 we're paying in commission? This is crazy. We don't know anything about this." Of course they don't, because you have a listing agreement that enforces that, right? How is your listing agreement any more important or any more legal than any of these other agreements that we're doing here? They're not, right? How is it any more? They're FAR forms, just like this one is that you're looking at on your screen, just like your contract is. Everything on the contract's getting enforced at the closing table. Everything on your listing agreement is getting enforced at the closing table. Why would this not be? And so we're making it, we are aiming to make it with our lawyers' help, aiming to make it a condition of closing. So you cannot have to chase it later. I don't care what the board says. That is ridiculous. Yes, Tammy.
So, the lender will find out what our transaction fee is to do their worksheet, I can't think of the name of that, to give to the buyer. So when they get a loan approval, they see the bottom line numbers. So they would would they probably have to put in our?
No,
whatever-
yes, absolutely. You're going to share that with the lender. Yes,
Oh, okay,
absolutely.
yeah,
Lender needs to know they owe us this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can share the buyer brokerage agreement with the lender. You can share it with whomever. Yeah. It's funny, they take your word for what your commission split's going to be, right? Like they never ask to see your listing agreement when you send something to the title company sends you an email. What's the compensation on this? And you say 3 to me, 3 to them, 2.5 to seller, 2.5 to buyer, whatever it is. They never say, let me look at your listing agreement, because no seller ever complains about it, because you tell the truth. I mean, if you lied, they would. If you said 6% and it was really supposed to be 4%, they're going to raise, and a lot of you guys have done that before because we've heard about it. Hey, it was supposed to be 5% and it's 6%, because you guys make a mistake and you thought it was 6 or whatever. And you go back and look at it, it's like, oh, it was just 5. Oops. It was 2.5, right? Or whatever it was. So, yeah, that's what you're going to do. Present that to the lender, present it to the title company if necessary, whatever it is. The buyer brokerage agreement we're talking about. That form is not out yet. It'll be out in July. And we will, for those of you who missed it earlier, we will have our attorney here to discuss that with you. He specializes in, he's not our attorney only. We hire him to do stuff when we have to deal with FREC or the local associations or anyone that. He is all about license law and all about FAR bar forms and that kind of thing. That's what he does. Any other questions or comments on these things? And we're going to talk about the market. All right, let's talk about the market. What are you guys seeing in the market? While we're still offering commissions on MLS, what are you guys seeing in the market?
I'm seeing a lot of 2% on the compensation instead of 2.5.
Yeah, people have gotten a little. People have gotten a little more wild with that. I think a lot of it's because of this. That people have gotten a little more wild with it. It certainly isn't because it's such a great seller's market. It's because people have gotten wild with it because of this settlement. I believe that they think, oh, we'll just offer less. Realtors are going to cut their commissions, as our president has suggested that we do. That we play our part in helping people buy homes by cutting our commissions. That is up to you to decide if that's a good idea or not. But Tariq, you can do buyer brokerage agreement now, and you can offer and you can negotiate whatever you want now, because it's the Wild West out there now.
Right.
You're still not supposed to do that if they're offering 2% on MLS, but what are they going to do? It's illegal for them to do anything about it now. You can offer 0 on there now. So my suggestion to you is to negotiate, certainly use buyer brokerage agreement, and ask that buyer. You already can do this, by the way. You can do this. You can ask for concessions, a 1% concession toward the closing costs and prepaids of the buyer, which includes buyer brokerage agreement.
Oh, nice. Thanks.
All right. And discuss that with your buyer, obviously. So they're giving 1% back, so you guys don't have to come out of pocket. Don't worry about coming out of pocket. They're only offering me 2%. That 1% you're getting back is to cover me, so you guys don't have to come out of pocket.
Oh, nice. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. It's all about how you present that. Any other questions? Comments? I think I saw something in chat. I apologize. Hold on a second. Barb. Often when I'm showing homes with solar panels, the cost of panels sends the listings off the showing list because the buyer assuming the loan makes it too expensive. In my mind, commissions are in the same category. It is so important to do your homework before showings. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Because what do you guys have? You guys have gas and time. Those are your resources. Gas and time, and both of those are money. So if a 5-minute phone call or a 1-minute phone call to Tammy to ask her what her people are offering is going to save you half a day of showing and writing an offer and getting it signed and sending it over. Make that phone call. And Tammy may already know. Tammy may say, no, this thing's been on the market for 3 months. People have been asking for concessions and they will not concede one dime. Right? You guys know that. You guys know sellers who won't come off their asking price, whatever it is. And so if I call you, Tammy, and you have somebody who has not for 3 months come off their asking price of $400,000, and I say, my people are willing to do $375,000, you're going to chuckle and say, good luck. They're not going to take it. Well, what do you think they'll do? You're not allowed to really answer that, but you can say, well, they haven't yet come off their asking price, so I would be really, really close to that or on it if you want to even be considered, right? That's the kind of thing you do. Now, if my people are only pre-approved for $375,000 and I know they can't or won't do more than that, then all right, well, thank you, right? I don't want to waste your time, my time, your seller's time, my buyer's time. So yeah, figure out things beforehand. This is how, guys, this is saving yourself time by making a phone call has been happening since the beginning of time, right? Or if Tammy's listing, and like Barbara's example says, solar panels, I'm going to call Tammy and find out if they're leased or owned or what's the balance and this and that and how much they're saving every month. And can you prove it to my buyer how much you're saving every month? And, you know, whatever. I'm going to ask all those questions. If I don't like her answers, I'm not going to show the property, right? Oh, they owe $50,000. They're not willing to help on anything, and it saves them $200 a month on their electric bill. Okay, thanks. That's out of our range. Okay. Any other questions? Comments on what's going on in the market? Juliana.
Yes, I have a question. It's it's regarding commission, but it's because I have a friend. She has a real estate license. She does timeshare, but she wants to sell her property, and so she wants me to help her putting it on the MLS. Can we do that?
Of course you can. You can do you can do it limited service. She can handle all the showings. She can do everything else, and you can charge her $500, $50, $5, whatever you want. But we need a fee though if you do that, because anything less we have to keep paperwork for 7 years.
Okay, so I put like a flat fee for my side, and then buyer's agent.
Offer whatever she's willing to offer, 2.5%, 3%, whatever she's willing to offer.
Right. Okay, perfect. We'll
And
do
she's
that.
still saving. Let's say you do it for $1,000 or whatever. She's still saving how much ever she's saving by not paying the listing side.
Right. Okay, perfect.
Well,
I'll do that.
and to answer this question, I get this question from you guys all the time. How much should I charge my friend to do just a limited service? Whatever you think the friend will pay and you want to pay, and whatever you charge them, we don't care. We just have to get our fee. You guys can do work for how much ever you want. We don't care what you charge your friends. Depends on how good a friend they are. I give all those answers. So how good of a friend is she? That's the bottom line. Or, you know, and obviously how much work is it going to be for you? Because you're going to, even if you direct all the phone calls, I can tell you this from the ones that we list for people, even if you tell them, you put in realtor remarks. If I had a secret that I didn't want anybody to know, I'd put it in realtor remarks, because people do not read realtor remarks. It's ridiculous.
All right.
So
I could put her phone number, her name, and direct the calls to her.
say that she's the owner. Say, please call for any showings. Please call the owner. Please submit all offers. Are you going to look over her offers for her?
I'm gonna help her out with that. Yeah, but she's been doing that for a while.
Well, if she's only been doing, if she's done residential before, that's okay. But if she's only been doing timeshare, she doesn't know what offers look like. So
Okay.
I don't care how many years she's been doing timeshare, she doesn't look at real estate offers. So whatever you want to do for her, you figure out how much work it's going to be. But I will tell you, even if you say, please call the owner Susie at whatever her number is with all questions for showings, for everything, they're still going to email you the lowball offers. You're still going to get phone calls and all that stuff, because people aren't going to read the realtor remarks.
All right. Okay. But yeah, we'll do that then.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
Tariq.
Ryan, that August 17th deadline from NAR, that can also be pushed further out, right? Like it could be September.
Theoretically, it was already moved from the middle of July to a date certain of August 17th. We've been told mid-July this whole time, and then until a month and a half ago or something, they changed it to August 17th. So it seems more concrete and serious once they put an actual date on it instead of middle of July. They made it August 17th. So I think, unless something happens, I think that's going to be the date. But
I got you.
They're still fighting this thing out in court. The DOJ is still trying to get you guys not paid at all by the seller. Buyer's agent not paid at all by the sellers. Chad.
Yes, hi. Are prices going down, and is time on market, is that going up?
I would say the time on market's going up. I wouldn't say prices are going down. I have not seen that. I don't know if you guys have, but I have not seen the prices going down. I believe it is a fact that the days on market have gone up. Average days on market doesn't have that in my list of things here, but I can see the new listings. Price decreases are off the chart. 10,000. So new listings 6,800 Price increases, this is great, 900. Price decreases, 99.99. And I don't know if that's as high as it goes, or if that's why it stopped there, or if that's the actual number. So in the last 7 days, new listings in the Stellar MLS, 6810, which is a good indicator. It's Orlando, Tampa, all the rural areas in between the city areas, West Volusia, all the way down to Sarasota. Price increase up to Clearwater. Price increases 900, 6810 on the market. Price increase 900. Price decrease 99.99. Back on market 1750. That's kind of low. Sold 5824. 561 expired. Not bad. Pending lines up with the back on market and the solds. So it's staying about the same. Temporarily off market 500. Withdrawn 711. Canceled 991. So lots of withdrawals and cancellations, which means it is not a seller's market. They're not getting offers and they're taking it off the market, typically speaking. That's generalizing, but that's probably pretty safe to say. So yeah, the market it's bumbling along. We have a lack of buyers because we have because we have high interest rates. And sellers, we don't have a ton of sellers because they don't want to get off of their 3.5% mortgage and get into a 7%. Rakesh.
Yeah, so my question, Ryan, is we don't see any changes to the FAR or the actual contract forms, right? The agreement. It's really around the compensation forms.
We don't see any difference to what
We,
yet?
we don't see any changes to the contract agreement as such, right?
I don't have any idea. They have not announced that there's going to be a change to the as is or the standard contract. I don't know yet. I don't think this affects that.
Yeah, because I don't think there is anything in there regarding the compensation in the contract agreement.
No. Okay. So no, I don't think that's going to be in there. And the reason it's not going to be in there is because the contract is between the buyer and the seller.
Yeah.
And if you put that in there, if you put your actual that the seller is going to pay Florida Realty Investments 3%, for representing the buyer. The seller and buyer can renegotiate anything in the contract without you having any input in it. So they could just negotiate your commission out of the contract. Now, why would they not do that if you do concessions and stuff like that? Because the buyer owes you that money.
Yeah.
So you can put that in there, but the buyer owes you that money. The buyer will not negotiate you out because they still owe you that money, and we're going to make it a condition of closing, meaning they've got to pay that at closing. So if they negotiate it out, they're just giving money away that they've got to come up with. So FAR's official stance, which they made clear in a video recently, is don't put it in the contract because they can negotiate it away. But at the same time, with the other hand, they're telling you you've got a buyer brokerage agreement. They owe you the money. So why would the buyer negotiate away that? Yeah, why don't you lower the purchase price and we'll just cut Rakesh out of we'll cut Florida Realty Investments, meaning Rakesh, out of the deal. They still owe you the money. It's a condition of closing, so they're still going to have to come out of pocket for that money.
Yeah.
All right. So, but typically you're not going to put your commission in the contract.
Yeah. No, that's what I was saying, that typically we don't put that. That's why there's probably not going to be any change in that form, but we don't know, right?
But on the other hand, you're going to have a buyer brokerage agreement every single time. So they owe you the money. So I don't, this is so much nonsense. We're going to see.
One follow-up,
shake out.
One follow-up question, Ryan.
Yes,
so the builders are still offering. I had a few kind of clients recently take to the builders. When you go first time, right, to take a client to the builder, you really do very basic stuff. That okay, are you represented by an agent, and you put on the piece of paper, and that's pretty much it. I mean, there's not like any agreement as such you do at that time. How does that protect you as an agent? Because they also take information of your client that, hey, I mean, they take their email, phone number, and all that. And what stops the builders or anybody cutting you out of the deal after the fact? So is there something? You should have a buyer brokerage agreement, Rakesh. You should have a buyer brokerage agreement right now. Every day, guys. I know you're kind of new to us. I've been teaching this for 10 years. Buyer brokerage agreement. Tammy's tired of hearing about it. Everybody's tired of hearing about it. I've been telling you guys to use it. You don't, but I've been telling you for 10 years.
to use a buyer brokerage agreement. And you should have always been using it because it always protected you from people stealing your clients. And that includes builders. They cannot steal your client. We had one recently that our agent was out of the country. She registered them. She was not able to go with them. And they're trying to cut her out of the deal. I'm fighting with them right now because they tried to cut her out of the deal. She never showed up with them, but she did register them. She was originally contacted about the whole thing. And then the sales associate stopped contacting her and just started contacting the buyer directly. And now they try to cut her out of it. So we're working on that. But I would recommend that you be diligent in staying in touch with the sales associate all the time, where they cannot say that Rakesh didn't try. You know, even if they try to cut you out of communication, it can't be because Rakesh didn't try. It's got to be because, and it's got to be Rakesh saying, no way, dude, I was emailing you every week, never heard back from you, or whatever, right?
What do you, is there also something you can sign with the builder for that particular client that, hey, I brought it?
You're in the contract. They put it as a part of the contract. When you write the contract, they put you in there for a commission.
Yeah, but not before that.
No, you registered the client. You have proof that you registered the client.
Okay.
Get screenshots of you registering the client, get all that stuff. You show up the first time, take pictures with them, do whatever you want.
Sure.
You know, whatever you feel is necessary to prove that you were there with them and you showed them the property and you got registered. And when you meet them in person, you can do all that. You can get them to I don't know if they'll sign a commission agreement with you, the sales associate, but you know, whatever you need to do to document it, I would do that.
Okay.
I don't trust the builders.
Yeah.
Because I've seen them do this kind of stuff before, and they will do whatever. Oh, yeah, you registered, but the registration only lasts for 30 days, and they came in 32 days later. You know, whatever they can do to get out of paying you, they will. New home sales are great if you're dealing with somebody decent. Javier.
Yes, Ryan, it's a question. I already did this, but I want to ask if I did it in the right way. A better way to do it. So I'm in contract right now, and I negotiate the inspection of the property, and the seller agreed to pay $3,000 to my client, but they don't want to credit that in closing. They agreed to give my client a check in the table of the closing, right? So which is no normal, because usually when you sign, you're done. So what I did, this is my question. I did an addendum that said this. You tell me if I did it right. So the seller agreed to pay the buyer the amount of $3,000 in the form of a check that will be delivered to the buyer on the closing day by the title company. The seller's failure to comply released the buyer from the obligation to proceed with the contract, thus allowing the buyer to receive their good faith deposit amount back. And they sign it. Is that the right way to do it, or is it?
Are they getting a loan from a lender? Is a lender involved? I don't
Yeah,
think
but
can you do that with a lender?
Lender doesn't have to be anything because the price of the property is not changing. The loan amount will be the same.
Yeah, I don't like that, Javier. Anything that you put in the contract that isn't presented to the lender can be fraudulent. So I don't like that. I don't like the whole thing. And all you're making this is that they have to receive a check. Well, a check isn't only as good as the paper it's written on until it's cashed and deposited and goes through. I don't like any of that because of that. And the lender has to know if they're getting money back, because you can't. That's like getting more loan and they're getting money back. I don't think the lender would like that at all.
The lender know about it.
Okay, well, if the lender's fine with it, then make sure you have that on an email. The lender's fine with it. But what I'm concerned about is, why does the buyer want their money back? They don't want to close otherwise, or do they want to be able to pursue the seller for this $3,000 if they write them a bad check? So that's the two things you're doing. Why does the buyer want out of the deal just because they don't, because they won't provide the check? I would not put all that language about them not getting it, because who knows if that check is good. Well, I'm worried about the check being good. When I hear check, I worry about it being good. Why not just take it out of my proceeds? Why do I have to write a check? Why do you have to give me a check? That makes me scared, because that's the first thing I think of is if people want to write a check for something. Maybe I'm a little jaded, but when people want to write a check for something, first thing I think of is, what if it doesn't go through, right? So why that? Why not take it out of their proceeds? Why not $3,100 bills? Why not whatever? that concerns me. I would rather be able to chase it than unwind the deal. I mean, your buyer already has got their appraisal, they've already got their inspection, they've already got this stuff, and all you're saying is they get their deposit back if the seller doesn't perform. I want to be able to chase that $3,000. I want to be able to sue them for $3,000 because I know they got it because they walked off from the table with, $100,000 or whatever it is. So just something to think about. I wouldn't want all that language in there. I just want that $3,000. That I want real $3,000. I don't want a check for $3,000.
So should I do it
If
an
they get a
addendum?
credit for the $3,000 from the buyer, then they still have their $3,000 because they're going to bring $3,000 less to closing.
I don't know why they want to do it, Tammy. It doesn't make sense to me, and I don't think it doesn't sound like they explained it to him. It sounds like they just want to do it that way, which scares me. It's also, I mean, it's illegal to write a bad check for something, also. So that they don't make right. So it's illegal. You have to chase it for them. But if this is is a seller a foreign national that we're not going to be able to find, or that kind of thing too. So what do you do?
No, it's not a foreign national. But what I'm thinking is, how about if I do an addendum saying that based on the addendum number 1, where the seller has to come up with a check on the table of closing table, that check has to be a money order or cashier check or
money order preferred.
Okay.
Cash or money order. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's illegal to write it. Who's going to go to jail for a $3,000 check when they're just getting paid all this money? But also, who wouldn't just take it out of their proceeds? I don't understand this at all. I don't understand why they've got to write a check.
Actually, my client asked for it. How about they can give me a check at the end after closing?
Oh, okay, so they want money back that they're keeping from the lender. They're kind of keeping that from the lender. Then it sounds like maybe they hit their maximum they could get in concessions, or they did something. I don't know. The answer to that is I don't know. If that's what your buyer wants, it's what your buyer wants.
Yeah.
As long as they ask you for that in writing, then they can chase the guy for if he writes a bad check. So it wasn't the seller trying to pawn a check off. It's the buyer asking for a check. I'm fine with it. I feel better about it as long as your buyer put that in writing.
Okay.
All right. And they're probably not. Okay. I feel better knowing that your buyer asked for it, but that's that's fine.
Yeah, but I think I want to do an addendum saying that has to be a cashier check or money order.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, just to make sure that won't happen, that that they will not give us a bad check or something like that. I don't think they will do something like that, but
no, it doesn't sound like they would. It doesn't sound like that's their intention. I thought the seller wanted to do that. No, that's fine.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right. Tariq.
Yes, Ryan, in regards to going back to that 1% difference from my charging my buyers, if I wanted to waive that off, do I just make an addendum to the original agreement with them to say I'm going to be waiving off that 1% for them?
No, just tell them they don't owe it to you and don't chase them for it.
Okay. I thought you had some kind of written.
So don't worry about it. You can modify it, or you can just put it in the email that 2% is going to be fine. That's going to cover me.
Okay.
I know our agreement, dear Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I know our agreement says 3%, but they're offering me 2% and I'll take that.
Okay, cool.
And you won't owe me anything else.
Oh, great. Thanks.
All right. Any other question? And you can say our brokerage. You can say our brokerage will not be pursuing anything else.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
All right. Because we won't. So just so you guys know, when you operate as the brokerage, everybody pays the brokerage. We pay you 100% based on our independent contractor agreement that we've signed with you when you joined us. So you guys can negotiate on our behalf, and we don't care because it is really your money because we're giving you 100%. All right. Any further questions before we go? What do we got in the chat? Prices going up or down? I'm seeing different depending on the area. Of course, it is depending on the area, depending on demand. I'm seeing some neighborhoods where you wouldn't think that there's so many available properties, and other ones where there's none. And so it is supply and demand at its best. Is this
but broadly, what we are seeing, Ryan, broadly in Florida across the board, are we seeing prices going down? I mean, I am seeing prices holding, right? at least.
When the prices start going down, you'll hear about it. Everybody will be sending emails about it. It'll be a big deal when prices go down. They're not yet. And I don't know that they will. It depends on interest rates. So they announced yesterday that the Fed will not be dropping price, which it was just a projection anyway, that Fed would drop rates twice this year. They said they're only going to do it once. They still don't have inflation under control, and they're going to do it once, maybe in December. They think they're going to do it once, maybe in December. They don't, nobody knows for sure. Who knows what happens between now and December? So yes, Vivian, I'll text you back about that. Any other questions? All right, guys. Have a great day. Next week will be July 3rd. I will probably I'll probably be available. I won't have much of a class. A lot of you guys will be starting the weekend off because July 4th is on a Thursday, and we'll be closed on Thursday, probably on Friday too. I'll be around, but on the 3rd, I'll probably be available. Won't have much of a class, and you guys can come in here and ask me questions or something like that. Otherwise, you guys have a good week. Next month, all the forms start coming out on the 10th and on the 17th. We'll be discussing those. I think some come out on the 9th. We'll see what else we get in here. We'll get a lender in here for you too, probably after the forms and after the lenders to talk about how it's going to affect them, because I want you guys get that after all the forms come out, after they see everything. So we'll have a lender in late in July as well to talk to you about how some of these concessions and commissions and stuff are going to work with them counting these as closing costs and prepaids and all that stuff as well. All right. So we'll have verification, all that stuff. Guys, there's still a lot out there we don't know. Hopefully you feel a little bit better about things after today. This is not the doom and gloom. This is not the end of the world. You guys are going to be fine. It's just a little bit more paperwork, a little bit more explaining to people how you get paid, why you get paid, how that affects everybody, and dealing with all that. But it's just things that people deal with in every industry. Things get tougher, things get easier, things get harder. You're going to be fine. Let the ones who want to use this excuse fall by the wayside. You guys, this is not an excuse. You guys are still doing the same job, a little bit more explaining, a little bit more paperwork. That's it. All right. All right, guys. Take care. Have a great day. We're going to be great. See you guys soon.